All new at 4, a historic moment at the White House. President Biden signing the anti-lynching bill into law, making lynchings a federal hate crime. Joining me now to discuss the significance of all of this is Charlotte historian J. Michael Moore. Thanks so much for being here with us. First off, this is a long time coming. The first anti-lynching bill was introduced by North Carolina Representative George White back in 1900. Congress has failed to pass anti-lynching legislation nearly 200 times since. And now we are here at this moment. So what has taken so long to get to this point?
Well, it's interesting that Congressman White in 1900 was from North Carolina, and he was the only remaining black member of Congress at that time. So partly what happened was that the blacks lost their political representation. There's a lot to do with the history of Senate filibusters and that sort of thing. But I think the important thing is that it's happened now, and that's although it's too long in coming, it's a really good thing that it's happened.
There is a history, we know, of race-based violence here, well, not only just in America, but in the Charlotte area. One of the first lynchings in Mecklenburg County is believed to have happened at the site of Bank of America Stadium. We know that now progress is being made. Street names are being changed in Uptown. There is still, though, some resistance to that change. So how do you think the community can make amends with their history and move forward?
Well, I think it is doing that. And I think there'll always be resistance, but I think there's a strong momentum to do good now. There's a couple of different ways that things are moving ahead. Since the opening of the museum in Montgomery, Alabama, that the Equal Justice Initiative started in 2018, there's been a movement in Charlotte in the creation of a group called the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Remembrance Project that is working on telling the stories of Joe McNeely and Willie McDaniel, the two men who we know were lynched in Charlotte in the 20th century. And then there's, the County Board of Supervisors has commissioned a study looking at the impact of systemic racism by the county commissioners and over time. And there's a group called the Coalition for Truth and Reconciliation that's using that document that was produced by the public library to open conversations about the history of systemic racism and racial violence in Charlotte and its legacy and what we can do about it. So I think there's a lot of good momentum to look these issues more directly in the eye and think about what it has meant and what it still means for people and how we need to change.
You mentioned the Equal Justice Initiative, and according to the Equal Justice Initiative, more than 4,400 deaths in the United States were by lynching from Reconstruction to World War II, and impacting not just that one generation, but generation after generation of African-American families. In any small way, does this feel like a moment of justice for those generations impacted by this violence?
Well, I think it can be a source of justice for victims of racial violence going forward in circumstances where they can't find justice at the local level. I think that a lot more needs to be done before we can feel good about responding appropriately to this history of systemic racism and white supremacy in America and in Charlotte.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. A lot of times people celebrate these kinds of bills as progress. And listen, I'm all about positive thinking and seeing the bright side of things. But at some point, I feel like we need to examine and recognize why a bill like this is even needed. The fact that a bill like this is needed says something. All I'm saying is celebrating progress is one thing, but perhaps reflecting on our past to help us move forward is the most important part of all this.
Yes, and that's why it's so important that these efforts at community dialogue are moving forward in Charlotte. The Equal Justice Initiative, when they created the memorial in Montgomery, actually duplicated the memorials for each county so that they can be brought and located at the site of the lynchings that are being memorialized. And so it's hopeful that, and not too far down the road, we will have a permanent memorial in Charlotte to Joe McNeely and Willie McDaniel, to honor them and to make this something that's not just a one-time thing, but that's something that is an ongoing conversation and reflection that we have in our public life. If people want to know more about these two lynchings in Charlotte, there's an exhibition at the Levine Museum of the New South called It Happened Here, which looks at more detail of those two lynchings and the context of white supremacy in Charlotte at the time. And I highly recommend that.
J. Michael Moore, thanks so much for your insights, and certainly helpful.
Thank you. Thank you for talking to me.